Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome back. I hope you all had some biscuits during the break and some nice tea. I know they had to bring extra biscuits because we are oversubscribed, so I hope you all had a nice tea break. It's great to see more people in the room. The room's reconfigured. Fantastic. The next panel on angel investing will be moderated by Yvonne Greaves. Today would not be possible without Yvonne making it happen. She's been a true supporter of the vision ever since the beginning. We've been working on it for a year, so she's been fantastic. Yvonne is the Director of Women in Business for NatWest Group. She's an experienced non-executive director and holds a number of external board positions. She's non-executive director for Impact Investment Partnership Scotland and non-executive director for the growth company Business Finance. She's a member of the Scottish Government Women Enterprise Advisory Council, tireless supporter of women in business. Welcome, Yvonne.
So hi everyone, and it's lovely to see so many people here today. I know we've had a bit of a challenge with seats, so I'm glad everybody's in now and everybody can get a thingy. And I'm very much looking forward to this panel on angel investing. So I'm just going to call up each person at once, but we are going to do proper introductions in a couple of minutes. So first up, we have Jenny Tooth, who is the executive, OBE, who is the executive chair of UK Business Angel Association, the trade body for angel and early stage investment and all things expertise around everything to do with angel. And then next up, we've got Marla Shapiro. She's the founder and CEO of Hermesa Angel Syndicate. Marla launched the group in early 2020 and with two distinct missions: to give more women a seat at the table and to invest more money into women co-founded startups. And then next up, we've got Dodda Barry. He's a computer scientist and an angel investor as well, and the director of Alidasoft. Dowd is passionate about providing expertise in the use of technology in business and helping businesses achieving maximum IT efficiency and growth. And last but not least, we have Helen Oldman, who is the co-founder of Lifted Ventures, an early stage investment connector which makes regional funding accessible to all, irrespective of gender, ethnicity, neuro or physical diversity, and also a media expert as well, which I found out when I was rereading her bio. So welcome. The world of angel investing can be really, really confusing and can be quite the narrative around it, the language around it can be quite overwhelming when you first decide you want to start looking at equity investment and you think you know what you're talking about, and then you start hearing this completely different language and you think, oh my goodness, there's so much to learn. So just coming to you first, Jenny, you're an expert in this field. Can you just give a little introduction about yourself, your background and your involvement in angel investing, please?
Thank you, Yvonne. An absolute pleasure to be here. Lovely to see such a huge room full of amazing women and one or two men I see as well. So I actually have been angel investing for probably about 24 years, but my background is very much an economist, and then I've built and sold two businesses, but my passion for angel investing has really kind of grown over the years, and I was very fortunate in 2012, just after the financial crisis, well, 2011, really, 12, when we needed more investors. And so I was invited by the government to try and kind of really mobilize far more investors around small businesses. So I set up UK Business Angels Association then, that I've been running for many years. And we're really there to help build and grow many more people as investors, but to help them find the opportunities and link to amazing entrepreneurs. We work closely with government and help many people learn how to be a great angel. I will say a little bit more about the women's side in a moment, but just very, very kind of quickly give you a sense of what it is to be an angel. This is an individual who is using their own money. So we're not putting money into a fund. This is money that is coming from out of our own money, our own spare finance, by the way. And so for anyone considering, it is your spare finance. It's not your house, not your mortgage, not your school fees. But it is risky, so to that extent, it needs to be your fair money. But for anyone who wants to understand it, it is that very first piece of money that goes into an entrepreneur when they've already started to kind of develop it. We're talking less about that very beginning idea. It's when you've got something to show. So you may have bootstrapped a bit, you may have built your business to a certain point, but where you've got something to show its potential. So this is really a very important part of money, and it's about 2 billion is going into small businesses across the UK every year in angel money. So this is not insignificant. And angels are putting small amounts often of their own money, but when they come together in a group, and you'll hear more about that, then that money becomes a larger sum to access. So anything up to about 3 million is still often the angel side, and they will help you. They're there to build your business, help you grow, give you their experience, their contacts, their knowledge. And for anyone contemplating it themselves, this is open to women at really any stage in their own careers, provided they've got some spare money. But it's about your experience and knowledge that really, really matters. So this is my world, and I will say it right now, there are just not enough of those wonderful women still who thought of putting their money behind entrepreneurs, and especially wonderful entrepreneurs like yourselves. So at the moment, we're aware that there are 37,000 angels across the UK, and only 5,000 of those, 14%, are women. So we'll be talking a bit more about that this afternoon, but I think it's really important to have that awareness that as an entrepreneur, this is a very important area of finance for you, and for a woman considering what they might be doing with a bit of spare of their cash and their experience and knowledge, this is a wonderful place to put your money.
No, thank you, Jenny. And thanks for setting the scene. And Marla, what got you involved, and what's your background, and what's got you involved with your phenomenal, successful 23 investments already?
Thank you, Yvonne. Yes, hello, I'm Marla Shapiro. The minute I start talking, you can hear from my cracking American accent, but I have been here for 22 years. Actually, London is the city I've lived in the most. And I came to angel investing about 6 years ago, and I had an early background in finance. I always say that it didn't take. I did work at NatWest. It didn't work out. But I spent most of my career working in the overlap between media and technology. As the internet got faster and destroyed more of the media landscape, I started out newspapers, et cetera, music, film, and TV. And then I worked for 3 startups in Europe as head of commercial, selling back in. And I found that I loved that 0 to 1 and that building. But the last startup I was at was kind of going sideways. I was mentoring, which I loved, and so somebody said to me, you should really angel invest. And I'm like, well, I couldn't possibly, and I could. I just didn't know how. So I was very fortunate to have a friend who had started angel investing. He took me under his wing. I wrote my first check, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so fun. And he said, like, it was, and I'll talk about why I enjoyed it so much. And he was like, easy there, Tiger. I was like, no. And so I started, going to all these pitch events and meeting entrepreneurs, and I realized within 6 months that I knew every other woman at every single event. And I had only been angel investing for 6 months, and I thought, this is ridiculous. This can't be right. Somebody should do something about it. And as I always say, it was the biggest surprise in the world that it was me who did something about it. And I got 5 friends in January 2020, a fantastic time to start a business. We sat down, and I said, let's solve the problem. There are no women sitting at the table. Mesa in table is Spanish. It's Spanish mesa. Sorry, you got it. So her mesa. Let's create a seat at the table for ourselves. And my community, at that time, a whopping 4 other women plus myself, said, I want to back other women. And so we're now over 200 members. We've done 30 rounds of financing. We've backed 23 unique companies. But everything is kind of the same as it was when there was 5 of us. We invest to make money. I want to be supremely clear. Women invest to make money just the same way men invest to make money. This isn't philanthropy. We invest for return, and I'm very happy to talk about the alpha that you get from investing in women versus male entrepreneurs. So we invest to make money. We invest to learn. I love meeting entrepreneurs, other investors. I love learning about the future, thinking about what AI is going to do, et cetera. And lastly, we invest to back founders who are building the world that we want to see. Hermesa is gender lens investors. We back women co-founded ventures, which means we are sector agnostic. But time and time again, our community wants to back the future of people and the future of planet.
No, thank you, Marla. And Dowdy, your specialism in sort of IT and technology, what got you involved and started to become an angel investor?
Hi, hello everyone. I got started about 5 years ago, actually. I was recruited by a London VC firm to work as an entrepreneur residence, worked for them for a summer, then moved on to another one, did 2 fellowships, and then I got back per se. LSI is an exciting area to work at, even though the losses are not, statistically, stats are not really in your favor. But I think there's a big need for bigger diversity, both in terms of gender, race, socioeconomic background, for more people to get involved. And also because, funny enough, I've been building businesses since I graduated from university. My first business, we started with a small business grant. Backup plan was, this doesn't work out, let's go back to grad school or something. Things have been working out, and then I think I had some knowledge that I could pass on to other founders. And also, it's a good way to generate wealth. Statistics, I believe, is, out of 10 investments, you're just going to see a return in 1 or 2, but those returns usually pay off for, the other 8 or 9 that you're going to miss out on. That's how I got started.
No, amazing, thank you. And Helen, you've had a lot of success as well, and now a really successful angel investor, and with your new venture, Lifted Ventures. What got you, coming from a really successful career in the media, to get into angel investing?
Thanks, Yvonne. So first of all, really lovely to be here in a room packed full of women and with some chocolate as well, like my 2 favourite things. I have a background in news brands. So I was the managing director of The Scotsman and the Yorkshire Post, and the newspaper as well when our organisation bought that. And I got involved in the sort of early stage environment when we set up an accelerator inside our offices in Leeds, actually at the Yorkshire Post, and really enjoyed that one-to-one relationship with entrepreneurs, where we gave them some free media, some mentoring and support, and some wider business support as well. So when I came out of the media environment and was thinking about where to put my attention, I decided to set up an angel network in the north of England. And at this point, it was a sort of all-gender network. We pretty much put out a message saying that we were setting up an angel investment network for the whole of the north of England, and gradually picked up around 170 members in the end. But what we noticed was, organically, we had a steady stream of white guys applying with very, very little effort. And whilst I was very determined right from the beginning, given some guidance from Jenny, that we would have a very firm gender lens from the beginning, it proved really, really difficult. So at that point, we set up something called Fund Her North, which was a collective of women in the north of England who were working together to get more capital flowing towards women. So, has anybody read the Jim Collins book, Good to Great? Yeah, quite a few people. There's a chapter in there about how when you take your passion and what you're good at, and there's a market need, then all of those things coalesce. So I was very fortunate to be able to set up my own business with my co-founder, Jordan Darg, called Lifted Ventures. So we exist to plug that early stage investment gap in the north of England. And we're very much about promoting the fact, to lead on from what Marla said, that we don't want to talk about gaps or challenges. So we've all heard, the figures around how much money goes towards female founders. We're really about concentrating on the fact that when you invest in women, your returns are likely to be strong. So we know, for instance, that for every £1 investment invested in a female founder, they'll generate twice as much revenue. We know that women are more likely to exit businesses. So 12% of women are likely to exit a business versus 8% of male-led founders. And we also know that women are more likely to exit faster as well. So there's very strong portfolio-backed reasons why you would back women. So Lifted Ventures exists to fill that gap, promote those messages, and we're also very interested in supporting diverse founders. So we've already launched an investor blueprint about how to support female ADHD founders. And then we're moving into a space now to look at disabled female founders and the business reasons why you might back those.
No, thank you. So a phenomenally experienced panel here. We're kind of got dual purpose on this panel today. There's an aspect around what is angel investing. So for the women entrepreneurs in the room today, how do you access the syndicates? How do you find syndicates? What does it mean to get equity investing? And then there's also the other aspect around how do we get more women to become angel investors, to get that share of wealth and to build that growth. So I'm going to swiftly move on to Jenny to give a little bit of an explanation on not your full A to Z of what angel investing is, but just a couple of key points about where it should be in, and then just talking a little bit about women backing women and why it's such an important campaign.
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. I mean, I think you've obviously quite realised how important it is for women as founders to understand more about the opportunity to access angel investment, before you've really, got to the point where you're ready for venture capital, and how important that angel investing is. But I think for us, what we recognise, and you've already heard this already, is that for many of you, there is still a big challenge in finding that angel investment you need. And one of the things that we'd identified through our research, that when women do grasp the idea and start doing it, that women actually do want to back other women. Women want to have women founders in their portfolio. Not only because they recognise, we've already heard the wonderful kind of likely outcome of that, but because we are drawn to it because we know what your business challenges are. For many of us who've been through building and growing businesses and working with women, we tend to get what it is you need and what you're doing. And we know, because I wasn't in the previous panel and didn't hear all of it, but I know that many of you have had quite challenging experiences in trying to find the investment you need. And standing in front of a room of all men, I know just how daunting that is, and the kinds of questions and approach you get. It's very, very challenging. And so we recognise the power of actually bringing more of women into this market. What we're also aware of is that knowledge hasn't been out there, that awareness, that understanding of how you become an investor and the pathway to start investing. And you'll hear a little bit more this afternoon about how important syndicates are as a wonderful way as a woman to work and invest alongside other women, and all the opportunities for that. So with that in mind, and realising how important angel investing is, but how important women are in this market, and very much with the support of the work of Yvonne and Nat West, we set up the Women Angel Task Force more than 3 years ago now, with a real mission, which was to build more awareness and more understanding of women across the UK about how to invest. And more importantly, to help those women to both receive education and to be mobilised into amazing syndicates of the kind you're already hearing about. And at the moment, as I said, we have this very challenging number of only 14%, but we can see now how important it is to be able to help mobilise women into groups. So we've got women in all female groups, and that is happening all across the UK now, including in Ireland and Scotland and Wales and other parts of the country. And we've also got groups where there's a strong proportion of women, but the common theme is 100% commitment towards backing women entrepreneurs. And we're seeing a growing number of those groups. There's a lot more to be done, but I think it's very, very important for women to recognise that it is fun. You've already gathered. These women are having a whale of a time. It's very rewarding, very beneficial. You learn so much, and it's a wonderful way of putting back. So we've got, we've talked to women about why they want to do it. And besides the opportunity to make money, which is wonderful when it works, to be honest, that whole opportunity to put back, to really kind of put your own experience and knowledge behind your investing, and to really help make that business grow, to help them nurture and gain success. And then that success becomes your success. So we can see all the benefits of that. So the Women Backing Women campaign is out there to raise awareness, build knowledge, give education, and help women to understand that this is not difficult. You can do it. Small amount of money, lots of fun, and huge rewards and benefits from doing so. So
yeah,
there's a bit more about that.
Yeah. there's there's a real perception that you've got to be a millionaire to become an investor, but that's not the case. You know, like a couple of thousand you keep saying and also the tax advantages as well that you'll probably move on to at some point. So, but Marla, rapid growth, 23 investments already, but what specific strategies should female SMEs in the audience today make to make their business more attractive to syndicates like Hermesa? Because you probably get thousands of applications or many applications, and you're choosing a select amount every year.
Yeah, we were digging into the database. We've had about 2,000 pitches, and we have 23 companies in our portfolio. So that means we're funding just over 1%. So your question, Yvonne, I do apologize because I was reading it earlier today, and I thought, ooh, I'm going to take a little issue with Yvonne with this question. What do women have to do? Women don't have to do anything, right? Women have to do the exact same thing that men have to do. You have to come up with a compelling business, okay? So just to be supremely clear, at Hermesa, we have a very, very structured process where we go through from the top of the funnel, somebody sends a pitch, down to investment. And at every stage, we use experts within our community because being gender lens investors, you know, one day we're looking at circular fashion, one day we're looking at robotics, one day we're looking at ag tech. So we use sector experts, which I think helps when you're doing something new, because you're like, how do I know if it's a good deal? Well, we actually have people who are very experienced. But for a woman who comes, or a man who comes to pitch, what's the problem? Is it a hair on fire problem? Nobody buys if it's the 7th problem on a list. Does your solution actually work? Can you reach the customer? Are you an extraordinary founder? These are the first 4 questions we ask, and I'm sure everybody asks exactly the same question. So I don't think women have to do anything differently than men. I think they have to have a strong, thoughtful business case. I think, actually, one of the founders that we've been watching for a while in our pipeline, has a robotics startup, said to me, I think that because women know how tough it is to start a business, if there's 10 men who think they want to start a business, 10 men will start the business. Only 4 women will, but they'll have been really, really thoughtful about it. So again, you know, just coming back to this arbitrage opportunity, as long as it's a good business, investors should listen to you, and they should listen to you whether you're solving a lady problem. I don't even know what that is, a lady problem. People are like, do you invest in lady things? I'm like, I don't know, like soil health, like, you know. But whatever it is, a smart investor should listen, grasp the problem, and seize the opportunity to back strong founders.
No, absolutely. Fair challenge. I'm slightly nervous to ask my second question, just in case I've given the same problem here. But so gender does play a role. We hear that, and I know that your whole focus is on women, but we do know in the wider angel space that there is sometimes more of a challenge when it comes to women accessing the networks and getting into front. So what do you see? You're obviously all female now, so it's different.
Well, we're women-led, but not women only. Men invest with us. But yeah, no, I mean, listen, I could live in this world, right? But this world is not always of course it's the real world, how do I say? But on the Hermesa website, you'll look and you'll see a little tab that says the diversity dividend. And this is where we talk about the benefits of backing female founders. But at the bottom, we have the difficulty of female founders. And we quote a study from MIT that gave men, attractive men, and then women as a single class, the same pitch deck with the same script. And they each went up and they said word for word, same slide, same business. Men were 4 times as likely, were deemed credible 4 times more than women, and attractive men were deemed more credible than women 6 times. So the mere act of pitching while female reduces your credibility down to 1/6 of that of a good-looking man. And that's a fact, right? I mean, I quote this statistic, this study all the time because it's insane, but it's also reality. So what can a female founder do? I'll tell you one thing, the women angel groups, we don't have enough money versus our male counterparts. Women are underpaid versus men, yada, yada. So what you have to do is 2 things. I think, you know, you just have to prepare yourself for it as an entrepreneur. I think if you are in a position to back, if you really care about making a difference for those entrepreneurs and you can back them, as Jenny says, to become an angel. And then the worst possible thing you can do, but I've been told it works, is you bring your male CTO. and that makes you more credible again. We know that male-female co-founded teams get about 6 times the investment of female-only founders.
And I honestly thought it was an urban myth until I met somebody who had done this strategy. She trained up an actor to come in, and seriously, she was getting nowhere. She trained an actor to come in and be the guy, and she got investment. And I actually know the company that did it. It's crazy. Hopefully hopefully with the whole Women Back and Women campaign, the whole more syndicates, more narrative around it, we can start to see that change. I'll never tell you who the company is though. So, your particular focus is in African tech startups. What differences do you see? Because you're obviously working, I know Jenny, you're European and you work internationally as well, but what differences are you seeing, if any differences between the different countries?
It's very, very uniform actually. It's very similar to the UK, US. From last year, I believe female founders in Africa, they raised 2.3%. So very similar to the UK, US, which is 2%. So challenges, the barriers are very uniform really. I think biggest difference I would say is that you need to show more traction if you are raising in Africa because of macroeconomic challenges, things that are not in your control. You cannot easily go and grab a coffee with someone as if you're in London or Silicon Valley. So that's really the biggest challenge, yes. How you validate this business idea? How do you know you're going to work? How can you build trust? Sometimes, you are in New York or London and someone else is in Nairobi, Dakar, or Lagos. So it's a longer process.
And do you see any differences in coming to gender? I think Marla, you touched on it about sectors, and we see the types of sectors that women typically or historically have set up in business have maybe been harder and a little bit more challenging when it comes to angel investing. Are you seeing any differences in the sectors that you're investing in, or that you're working with people who are investing in it around the gender perspective?
Overall in Africa, the hot sector really is fintech. So fintech dominates. Last year it was fintech and clean tech. I usually see many women, actually one of our portfolio companies is in LTech. So actually women usually, men from what I see from pitches and our portfolio, men usually go more towards fintech, and then I'm seeing more women really building businesses in LTech. Yes, so that's the biggest difference.
And we probably just need that throughput, more women in STEM coming through and setting up emerging technology businesses as well to get that next stage of investment.
Yes, definitely. I think building pipeline from an early age, it's very, very important, yes.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will lead more to change.
No, thank you. And Helen, you're a serial entrepreneur and a serial investor as well, but you've got that angel investment to increase investment across the regions, especially the north of England. We know that the vast majority of investment goes London South East. Can you just talk about what you see across sort of the north of England and the regions that you're sort of investing and working within, please?
Yeah, so I think it's well known that 75% of all investment goes to London and the South East. And even when you aggregate all of the sort of VC funding that goes to the north of England, I'm classing the north as being sort of Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, up to Newcastle. It's still less than 12%. It's a really small amount of capital given the size of those conurbations and the amount of tech activity and entrepreneurial activity that's happening in those cities. I think whilst it's a challenge because of the general flow of capital, there's also a really big opportunity because the environment's so nascent. So I think our opportunity to build what I would call conscious capital is really strong in the north of England. I know Jenny's quoted numbers quite often saying that I think 53% of all of the female angels in the UK are based in London. So again, the minute you start coming outside of the capital, those numbers become smaller and smaller, and the need becomes even greater. So yeah, that's why we've set up predominantly what is an angel network. We have mixed gender there as well, but like Marla's group, we're predominantly women with some really strong male advocates in that as well. And, we're typically seeing 5-6 applications a week, and that's picking up. So there's no shortage of really high quality female-led businesses. The issue is still around the capital. Our network's growing, But really, to be super effective, we also need to be joined by government in some focus funds for female founders that work alongside angel capital in a way that means that we can really start meeting the needs, I think, across the whole of the UK.
No, I think that's really important, that whole regional aspect as well, and wider UK aspect. With regards to the educational aspect, I know you've done a lot of work around this, around it's almost dual purpose, around educating entrepreneurs, around the investment landscape, but also educating women to become angels. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so again, the UK BAA did some really good research that talked about the barriers to women becoming investors, but the number one barrier is a lot of people don't know anything about it. So I think our biggest opportunity is in promoting the whole sector. But then we also know that women are more likely to be risk aware in terms of how they might deploy their capital. UBS talked about the sort of wealth gap that exists as you go through your career. And it starts off with you potentially maybe taking some maternity leave, which then might impact on your overall earnings over time. You might also have a gender pay cap in your organisation if you're not working for yourself. And then if you don't have some high risk in the way that you deploy your capital, the way that you think about your money, then you're never going to change the outcome in terms of how your wealth grows versus that of someone who's a male equivalent. So thinking about how you use just a small percentage of your capital, and I know typically we would talk about 10% of that, in angel investing can help to change the outcomes. And essentially what we need to do is just create that education environment where women understand how to be effective angel investors. We know that women need a bit more information before they take those first steps. So quite often when we talk to women who may have heard about angel investing, first of all, they might think it's not for them because they don't have enough money. In our organisation, the minimum investment is £2,000, so you don't need to be an ultra high net worth. And then how do you actually show up in the space and be effective? So we've developed some education programmes supported by the British Business Bank, which are free to access and basically go through every stage of the information that you might need to be an angel investor. So that starts off from how do you think about what kind of businesses you might select, so your investment strategy. How do you sort of sift through all the opportunities you might see? One of the problems I find is there's so many amazing businesses out there. You have to be really clear about where to put your capital because you could say yes every single day, couldn't you, Marla? So how do you think about that? And then all the technical side of angel investing, so understanding what the legal process is, understanding how to read profit and loss accounts and cash forecasts, those kind of things, and then the due diligence that might take place. We just bring those all down into really simple to understand workshops that people can work through and then have a go at angel investing at the end as part of a syndicate where you're sharing information with sort of like-minded people and learning as you go along.
No, thank you. And I think that's really valuable, that education aspect, because I get asked a lot around this education part, how do I upskill, how do I learn? And one of the questions, and before we're going to open up for questions in a couple of minutes, so get your thinking caps on, but one of the questions I get asked a lot is, how much is too much to give away in the first round? And Jenny, we've spoken about this many times, because I consider myself quite financially literate, but in this world of equity, I've been on a massive learning journey. You don't know you're my unofficial mentor. Learning from all the phenomenal people that I've met on this journey, because it is hard and it's quite complicated. And there's a lot of language in it that you're like, that's unfamiliar language. And when you ask them, what does that mean? You're just like, could you not just have said that in the first place? You know? So the language is really, really difficult. But just coming to that, a quick fire around how much is too much. What would you anticipate giving away in your first round? If you can put parameters around it. Like, is 40% too much to give away?
Absolutely,
Is 5%,
yeah.
So
you want to give away as little as possible, don't you?
Yeah.
So thinking about how to set the valuation and a realistic one is obviously the first challenge. But then being really clear about how much you want to give away. And I would say set a maximum of between 10 and 20%. Absolute maximum. You might be able to do less depending on what your starting point is. And particularly, it also depends on what stage you're at. If you're very, very early on, then it wants to be a really small percentage of your business.
No, thank you. Anybody else got a thought on that, Dowda?
There is a book called Angel by an investor called Jason Calacanis. I don't know if that rings a bell, but he was one of the early investors in Uber, and I think he got 100,000 return on Uber, and now he's a multimillionaire. He's also on Twitter, so if you're on Twitter, more likely to hear about him. So in Angel, one of the main messages, in the book Angel, is ideally you should get started with angel syndicates, because with angel syndicates you can start as early as $1,000. And he advised, do 10 1,000 checks, and then write down your learnings, because you're going to make mistakes. So that would be my advice, yes. Join a syndicate, put in $1,000 or $2,000. Usually you can get started as little as $1,000, and then iterate. And as you become more confident, then you can increase your check size. But I think most important thing is only invest what you can lose, because more than likely you're going to lose it.
Yeah. Do you want to say something, Bernla?
Yeah, no, actually, that's fantastic, because that's exactly the way we've built Hermesa. I think that, if you don't mind me saying, I think that women, again, a class, we're not a single class, but that women tend to over-prepare. You know, the thing that says women won't apply for the job unless they have 100% of the skills. Why do women need to take a training class to become angel investors? I mean, Jenny will answer the question, but I can tell you, when I was doing my research, I asked my male friend, who now runs a fund, how'd you get started? And he's like, I wrote a check. And I asked a woman, and she explained, who also is currently running a fund and is a hell of an investor, huge risk appetite, great investor. And she was like, well, first I took one course, then I took another course, then why do you need to take all these courses? And so what we think is that the best way to become an angel is to start very small, so like the 1,000, 2,000 pounds, and to learn by doing, and to go and join it again. We're going to push syndicates all day long. But no, in all seriousness, come, sit in on due diligence, create a paper portfolio. Just start learning, because it's a little bit like anyone who has kids. You can read all day long about how to play the piano, but you really need to practice the piano. And I can assure you, I've written 20 checks individually, and my 20th investment is a much better call than my first investment. I've learned a lot. So that's my encouragement, is to start as an angel investor. Start small, but start.
No, that's great. And Jenny, let's talk about the tax advantages, because in the UK they're incredible.
Yes, thank you, Yvonne. I mean, we've been incredibly lucky in this country, and it's been across all parties that for nearly 30 years. We've had a really important tax break that was given to encourage people to back very early stage risky businesses. I hope many of you have heard of it, but it's called the Enterprise Investment Scheme. And it's kind of, it's earlier relative for in terms of more risky businesses is the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme. And what this is giving is important tax reliefs to encourage investors to take the risk and back your business. So if you are a very early stage business and you're less than 3 years old, I've only been trading for 3 years and still have a very in the early stages of your business, then you as an entrepreneur can offer investors a 50% tax break if they back you in back your business. And for women as investors, that's very important to know. So if you're giving £2,000 to a deal, to an investment, you get 1,000 back from the government. And also, if you want to maintain that investing, you won't pay any gains on the gains that you make in terms of those investments. And also other useful things like inheritance tax. Also, as an investor, if you have sold another business or a property, you can reinvest that money, and that takes 50% off the tax you would normally have paid as capital gains. So you can see how incredibly important that is. And if it's a slightly more developed business, if you are still up to 7 years in your business, you can offer a tax break of 30% and very similar benefits. This is an incredibly important thing for an entrepreneur as a gift, because you can say, if you didn't know about this, an investor, you can back my business. And there are certain things you need to go through to make sure that you are eligible. But overall, most businesses are. But also, most importantly, many investors don't know about this either. So if you're an entrepreneur, tell the investors about it. And, you know, as someone contemplating investing, I'd say, why wouldn't you? The government gives you 50% back. So I think it's such an important thing, and we're all trying to raise more awareness about this. But I think we should bear in mind that the government has at least said this is going to keep going for another 10 years. So I would say this is one of the biggest things to know about, and for you as women, for you to know about it, because it is your gift back to an investor who may be hesitating. And for any woman contemplating investment, it's not the reason to invest, but it's a wonderful thing to know that the government backs the risk you're taking.
No, that's fantastic. We've only got a couple of minutes left, and I want to open it up to a couple of questions. Does anyone, we've got roving mics, I think, hopefully still. The lady right at the very, very back, and then the lady here, and then, sorry, we'll just need to grab us all in the breaks otherwise. Just at the very back.
Hi, I'm Annika, and thank you all very much for the panel. It was really great. For those who don't know thank you. For those who don't know UK BAA, they do like to do your swatting ahead of time. They've got a fantastic, very easy online course for those who are interested. But I have a real question, because I'm quite confused about the rules for who is eligible in terms of self-certifying and all of that. They brought in some new rules that seem to disproportionately disadvantage women, and now I've heard that maybe they're rolling back on that. Can you talk about that a bit, please?
Can I do it very quickly? So, just very quickly, thank you for that. So there was an amazing furore. I have to say, never was a big class act among investors and founders on this one when the government wanted to change the rules about who could invest and who couldn't invest in terms of the level of income you're earning and in terms of your experience. Rather than sort of bore you too much, just to say that, you know, as a general guideline, as a woman, if you have had any kind of general experience in in investing, you can be a sophisticated investor, or you can join an angel group for 6 months and you're eligible to invest. Or if you are a woman who has the fortune to be earning £100,000 a year, then that also means you can be a high net worth investor. Or if you have assets of £250,000, pounds would be nice, 1,000, you know, that's spare. But I wanted to assure everyone that there was a big kind of furore that may have made many women feel maybe I'm not eligible anymore. They have rolled this back due to an awful lot of noise that we all made, and the government is listening. And I'm pretty sure that this is going to be continuing across whichever party it comes into government in the time ahead. So do not feel deterred in any way. And you know, we've got all the right ducks in the row, I would say, right now for any of you to participate. There are very few real restrictions.
Yeah. And I was just going to say a massive thank you to Marla and to Jenny for all the work that they did on that. I think it was amazing to have got that turned back. And just to reiterate the point that you can be an angel inside a network. If you're part of a network for 6 months, you don't actually have to self-certify as having £100,000 or £170,000. Yeah. And you get that opportunity to learn as you go along, which Marla talked about.
No, thank you. Vanessa, do we have time for one more question?
Oh, why not go for it?
Right, okay. That just yourself then.
Yes, hi, Marianne and Terry. So, question is, so we're interested now, what is the next step? Is there a free event? Can we go to, is there somewhere we can actually join, go to, etc.?
I can't thank you enough for giving me the opening. And then Helen will do her opening. So Hermesa, HERMESA.co.uk. Go out. No, I am absolutely shameless. If we are here to bring more women into angel investing, I'd love you to give it a try with my organization. Hermesa.co.uk. Click on investors. Click on join us. Entrepreneurs, go to the entrepreneur tab. It explains in great detail what we look for, what our thesis is. Click on apply to pitch, and we'll look at your pitch deck. Okay, and so that's if you'd like to join our group. But I will also say there are a ton of fantastic organizations. Really, it's just, and I myself belong to more than just Hermesa, but please do give us a try. And now for Helen and for you, let's.
Well, we also have a website, but which is liftedventures.co.uk. However, I would advocate strongly look at the UK BAA website and look at all of the female focus or gender focused groups that there are.
Yeah.
And certainly look at either having a go, because I do agree with Marla that women can overthink things, or join an education programme if you're not sure. I mean, we had one on Friday. We started the first session. We had 20 women in it. And it was a group of women who said, oh, I didn't realise it was as straightforward as this. It's just like running my own business, isn't it? Like, yes, it is. So we're just providing confidence, I think, in that environment and a group where everybody's in it together.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, Doug, sorry.
Yes. Can I just add?
You keep it.
Great advice. I'm just going to add two more. I'm an alumni of Future VC. I don't know if anyone knows about it. There's Future VC, and there's another one called Newton VC. Newton VC is run by London Business School and a VC firm here in London called Local Globe, and I really highly recommend them. So you go to the theory, they bring on VCs, angel investors, so you learn theory, and then usually there are some syndicates within these programs for you to get started. I'm a big fan of Sol Klein, co-founder of Local Globe VC, one of the best VC firms in the UK, in Europe, and he says investors invest. So the best way to get started really, yes, learn by doing, roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty, and yes, start small, and with time, yes, grow your check size.
No.
Thanks.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I think we're going to be sending something out post-event, and maybe get all the links sent out so that you've got all the information that you need. But thank you so much to Ellen Dowd, Marla and Jenny. Thanks so much for sharing all your expertise. And I continue to learn every time I speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne, and this rare panel for sharing all your secrets and wisdom with us so generously. That was fantastic. Thank you. Now I'd like to welcome a very special guest. I met this fantastic lady at Mansion House at the Lord Mayor's Equality Breakfast. Throughout history, London has set the pace. In a time when all eyes are on London for the next paradigm shift, she and her husband are making a huge positive impact for women and girls entrepreneurs. A successful entrepreneur in her own right, her initiative on violence against women and girls in London kicks off next week. It aims to make this city the safest in the world for us all. I'm honoured to contribute to that, and today we're lucky to hear about her journey and the opportunity in London for women entrepreneurs. I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome the Lady Mayoress, Mrs. Elizabeth Manelli, to the stage.
Thank you, Vanessa. Ladies and gentlemen, it is wonderful to join you here this afternoon. So for those of you who don't know me, and I suspect that's the majority, I'm Elizabeth Manelli, and I have the honour to be the Lady Mayoress of London. My husband, Michael, is the 695th Lord Mayor, and he leads the City of London Corporation, the Square Miles governing body. During his 1 year of office, he also serves as an international ambassador for the UK's financial and professional services sector, representing and promoting our city abroad. Indeed, just last week, he was in China, discussing his mayoral theme, Connect to Prosper, which seeks to harness the city's unrivaled global connections, top talent, and world-class legal system to tackle international challenges like gender inequality. I know he wouldn't mind me saying so, but the office of Lord Mayor is an easier role to define than mine. And that's to be expected. It has, after all, been in existence for the best part of 1,000 years. So you'd hope it would have had at least the makings of a formal job description by now. The role of Lady Mayoress, on the other hand, remains a little harder to pin down, something I will try to cover during the course of my remarks. With over 4 million downloads, chances are some of you will have listened to The Squiggly Career. It's a podcast presented by Helen Tupper and Sarah Ellis, both highly successful London-based business professionals. And it's fair to say that I have had just that, a very squiggly career. I started off as an apprentice in hotel management in my native Germany, before coming to London for a year in 1983, yeah, I'm that old, to work on my English language skills. Having returned to Germany, I worked in hotels for 3 more years in event management, after which I came back to London and eventually became the personal assistant to the managing partner of a global accountancy firm. It was a very different time. Email and voicemail, new technologies for many businesses in those days. They were all the rage, despite very few senior people knowing how to actually use them. A fascinating time for a PA. Like so many women, I left to start a family, and alongside bringing up our daughters, I started up a small company to run the charter business for the Thames sailing barge Michael and I had recently bought. Barges became a big part of my life. So much so that I used to say I had 3 children, my 2 daughters, Xenia and Maxine, and the Lady Daphne, a 91-foot barge we owned and restored for over 20 years. The income from arranging cocktail parties or clay pigeon shoots aboard whilst we raised Tower Bridge a few hundred times each year during the charter season allowed us to restore the wooden hull, replace all the sails and the main mast, among many other things, and thus maintaining in a seaworthy condition and able to operate under full Class 5 passenger certificate. That was obviously not enough for me to do because, as in 2008, I completed a GIA diamond grading course and helped a friend set up the German operations for Hatton Garden diamond business. I organized virtual offices in Hamburg, Vienna, and later on in Zurich. At the time, a very new line of work when online shopping, especially for high-end goods, was a relative novelty in Germany, not to mention a source of bewilderment for some clients. Throughout this time, I've served as a director and treasurer for the in-house management company where Michael and I live. I must say I've learned a lot more about swimming pool maintenance than I ever wished to know. So a career spanning hotels, office work, barges, diamonds, and property management. As I say, a very squiggly one. What I have learned in that time is that there's no normal trajectory to follow. In fact, I don't believe a straight career path exists, at least for those of us who keep an open mind to opportunities that present themselves. There will always be compromises and distractions, along with unexpected, exciting, and yes, sometimes bizarre avenues to explore. But that lack of linearity has the potential to take us in all sorts of weird and wonderful directions. Who knew that I would become somewhat of an expert on Thames sailing barges, coming from the middle of nowhere in northern Franconia? But it has all led me to this point, as your careers have you. And the training and experience I have accrued has better equipped me for the more, how shall I say it, unique roles that I've had over the last few years. First, as a consort to a master of a livery company, with everything that entailed. Then as a consort to a sheriff for 2 years during the pandemic, and now as consort to the Lord Mayor. So returning to that promise that I made a moment ago, try as I might, the role of Lady Mayoress is one impossible to sum up in a single word. It involves a lot of ceremonial duties and charity events, but also offers a unique and exceptional platform to pursue causes close to my heart. It is why I'm especially glad to be here this afternoon, because I've chosen during my year as Lady Mayoress to support an initiative that tackles some of the unpleasant issues that affect many women and girls. If we want the City of London to remain a top global financial centre and a great place to live, work, and visit, the square mile must be somewhere where people feel safe, respected, and included. That is why I'm honored to be the patron for the Prevent Violence Against Women and Girls and Domestic Abuse, or Prevent VOG for short, consortium. A survey undertaken by Prevent VOG, which was released to coincide with International Women's Day, revealed that just 7% of people in the city feel very safe after dark, just 7%. Having gathered data on the scale of the problem, Prevent VOG is now working on steps to create a safer city for all. We started in early December with relaunching the taxi marshalling scheme at Liverpool Street Station. Every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, from 10 at night until 2 in the morning, there are 2 taxi marshals, black cab drivers themselves, who ensure that everyone who turns up at one of their ranks gets a cab home. None of this, Olaf, I'm not going that way. We have facilitated close to 5,000 journeys so far. The plan is to extend the Liverpool Street Station marshals through to 2025 and hopefully beyond, and to introduce a second location at Fenchurch Street Station later on this year. But there's always more that we can do, and that is why I have 3 key asks of you today. First, I would urge you to consider implementing a domestic abuse policy within your organization if you do not already have one in place. IDA, which stands for the Employers' Initiative on Domestic Abuse, can offer tailor-made policies entirely free to help tackle domestic abuse and champion change. Second, I would ask whether your office can become a safe haven. Some of you may have seen that the City of London Corporations Guildhall was designated a safe haven last month. It's a place where women and girls who feel vulnerable for any reason can access a temporary safe space and get help from trained staff with an app showing all of their locations, including the 27 safe havens that are now registered within the square mile. The Bishop of London asked earlier this year how she could help and has now nominated a senior individual who is currently negotiating with the 38 city churches so that they too can become safe havens. Although it won't be possible for them to be available 24/7, it will be a significant achievement if we can get them on board. And we would like the list to grow even further. Finally, please help us spread the word. There are so many excellent initiatives, many of them free, that are managed and require very little input, but have the potential to make a real difference to women and girls across the square mile. Please do get in touch if you'd like to find out more. I'm grateful for the opportunity to join you all today in what is, of course, Women's History Month, and would like to extend my sincere thanks to the IoD Glass Ceiling Group and Women on Boards for bringing us together this afternoon, and to NatWest for hosting us. London has changed a lot since I first came in the 1980s. In the vast majority of organizations, there is a desire to not only be diverse, but to be seen to be diverse, with huge opportunities flowing from that shift in attitude. Where closed minds still exist, I would remind you of the words of Shirley Chisholm, the first black woman to be elected to the US Congress. If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. I hope in time that prefix we use, women entrepreneurs, women leaders, will no longer be required. The need for any differentiation diminished. In that future, society will only see colleagues, entrepreneurs, leaders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your remarks and for being here today. Now I'd like to welcome these fantastic women to the stage to speak about the role of the board in driving corporate diversity. Fiona Haythorne from Women on Boards, Rosie Bishard from Lifted Ventures, and Peju Adebayo from AlidaSoft. Please take the stage.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to invite each of the panelists to introduce themselves. Fiona.
Hello, I'm Fiona Hathorn, the CEO of Women on Board's WB Directors. Delighted to be here today. I have a background in asset management, so I joined the city in 1986. Things have changed. I actually got involved in launching Women on Boards. We're a purpose-driven organisation. We're in your corner. I believe the boardroom really matters, whether it's a listed company, a charity, a government boards, because it sets the tone from the top. So my organisation does three things. Firstly, it will help you sell yourself into the boardroom and understand your board value add. You're never too young. You're never too old, you're never too male, you're never too anything to be in the boardroom as long as you understand your duties, responsibilities and liabilities. So that's what we do. We also work with a lot of corporates, planting seeds, telling people about the boardroom from a young age. I don't mind whether you want to be in the boardroom or not. But it's the same with angel investment, actually, from the previous panel. It's choice, but if you don't have the right information, you can't make the right choices. So it's really good. And the other thing that we do is we advertise board roles for free. And we also have a bespoke search data mining our database. So if anybody's here who's got any board, is looking for board roles, you know where to come, WB Directors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. And now, Rosie, I know you're not from Lifted Ventures. I apologise about this slide.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Our titles are a little odd, but anyway, that was obviously lifted from the previous panel. Hello, everyone. I'm Rosie Bishard. It's great to be back in the city. I started work here in 1990, first as an investment banker and then as a fund manager, which I spent about 25 years doing, very close to here. I have become a board member. I'm now a non-exec on several boards in the regulated financial services sector, UBS Asset Management, where I'm the audit chair for the UK, and also at Royal London. And I'm also active on several non-profit boards. I'm also actually an active angel investor, and so I really enjoyed the last panel. And I was formerly the chair of a Gender Lens Impact Investment Fund as well with Oxfam, so doing a similar thing for women-owned businesses in the developing world. So thank you very much to Vanessa. I'm very passionate about this topic, so look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Rosie, and thanks for working with me from the beginning to put this panel together. Peju, now I know you need to sneak off at about 5 or 10 to, so I'll try to give you as much airtime, but would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Vanessa. I haven't worked in the city. My memories actually of Liverpool Street are when I was much younger. I don't know if there still is, but there used to be a thriving Sunday market. And I would follow my mum, shopping in Liverpool Street. She was buying all sorts of things. And of course, being a young girl of African origin, I couldn't complain. And so we would wander for hours up and down Liverpool Street. So that's my claim to Liverpool Street. However, in my day job, I'm currently a board director on 2 UK boards. One is called Ipstock, and Ipstock is a listed company. It makes bricks, mainly bricks. And another is called Wolseley, and Wolseley is owned by private equity, and it distributes building materials, principally boilers. Now, how did I get here? Almost by accident, and I think that's why forums like this are very important. Because I spent a long career in corporate, spanning all sorts of things. So I've been in, and I have to count them, I think I've been in 7 different areas. I've been in banking, I've been in consulting, so I'm a chemical engineer by background, and so I went into manufacturing. And so I've been a CEO of a food company, a CEO of a mattress company, a CEO of agriculture, renewable energy, And I've forgotten something. Yes, and I also was in the public sector. So I've done a whole range of things, public sector, private sector. I've worked with family businesses, I've worked with multinationals, I've worked with PE-led businesses, I've worked in small businesses. I actually founded Mother Care in Nigeria, so I've been an entrepreneur. I've worked in small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses, failing businesses, successful businesses, all sorts of things. And so I found myself in a portfolio career almost by accident. So I'm currently a board director on 2 UK boards. I'm also a mentor with a company called Merrick. And I'm also a lead on a program called Solaris that mentors Black professional women. So I love all things women and helping women achieve whatever it is they want to do. And whatever career choices I think we make are legitimate. And so I think anything that we can do to open up new avenues that you might not have thought of before is totally welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to just start with you, Fiona. What is the role of a non-executive director, and how does a board member differ from a board advisor or shadow board member?
Okay. In terms of the role of a board, when I talk about a board director as a non-executive, so I'll cover the exec bit later, I also mean a trustee or a governor. It's the same thing. You as a registered director, and you can be a registered director in the UK of both an executive and a non-exec, trustees, charities, a bit different. Your job is to look after the long-term survivability of the organisation. It's actually not much more complicated than that, but there are some rules and expectations. One of the things that my organisation tries to do is demystify it. Boards actually only do two things: conformance, which is filing your accounts and abiding by the various laws, and the other thing is performance, strategy and stargazing, and that's your duty. Now, clearly, depending on what type of organisation you're on, whether it's a charity board, a public sector body, or a listed company, or even a private, there will be different expectations for you. And most board sectors have regulators, and they just look at company law or charity law and interpret it for your size. And the point here is to demystify it, because the most important skill that you can have as a board director, as long as you understand your duties, responsibilities and liabilities, is something called common sense. And we really just need all to make a choice to step up. In terms of, you asked the question about an executive. Executives, there are very few registered executive board directors. You know, charities, the chief exec is not registered as a trustee, it's different. But in the corporate sector, if you look at the FTSE 100, you've mostly only got two executive directors, the chief exec and the chief finance officer. And so the executive directors, or even a charity trustee CEO who will attend the board meetings, has a huge amount of extra information because they know exactly what's going on. A non-executive director have a lot less information, and therefore the trust and the dynamics of the boardroom is really, really important to be comfortable with. Shadow boards, I mean, I could talk about that. A shadow board can be all sorts of different things. It could be an advisory board. Lots of companies today are realising that they have a void of young talent in the boardroom. So they're setting up a shadow board, but that shadow board doesn't have the same duties and responsibilities, and it only works if the executive board and the non-exec treat it seriously, and they normally toss it a problem, and you can call it advisory board. There's quite a lot in that conversation, so I probably ought to stop there. I think I've broadly, we can go on a bit further, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Yes, your experience and knowledge impresses me every time. Rosie, what have you learnt from your executive career that has helped you to move into a board role?
So I think first of all, I learnt what Fiona just told us, which is the difference between board and management, because I had, as an investor, I had a good deal of interaction with both of them. As Fiona said, the management's there to execute, basically drive the business forward. The board is there to provide challenge, constructive challenge, support, and advice and oversight. And its main focus is on talent, strategy, and risk within the business. So it's a good place to start, because you know that you're not actually going to be kind of pulling the levers on a day-to-day basis when you're a board member. I think coming at becoming a board member from an investor lens, I think I bring three things. First of all is a lot of curiosity. I'm used to meeting with management teams, meeting with boards and asking questions. And so that level of challenge, saying, why are we doing this? How does it tie in with the strategy? How are we going to create value with this? Does it tie in with your purpose as a business? Those kind of questions and not being afraid to keep asking them it is quite important for a board member. Not giving anyone too much of an easy ride. The second point, I think, and again, we touched on this during the angel investing session just now, I've seen quite a few things that didn't work out, quite a few investments that were problematic or companies that went through periods of challenge. And through that, I've gained a great appreciation for the importance of good corporate governance, processes, sticking to the rules, and also forward-thinking risk and positive risk management. So that's the second thing. And I think the third thing, which ESG is a bit out of fashion, particularly if you spend any time on the other side of the Atlantic. But I think it's about having an appreciation of what will make your business sustainable in the long term, and whether that is environmental factors, whether that's about human capital, your customers, all kinds of stakeholders you can think of, employees in particular. That lens is also really important. And those are the three things I think that, as an investor, that's taught me.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Peju, I'd just like to ask you a very interesting question. How can a diverse board positively impact decision-making and overall corporate governance, and how can boards ensure that diversity initiatives are not just a tick box?
Thank you, Vanessa. Building on what Rosie and Fiona said, the board's main role, I think, is to ensure the long-term, with an emphasis on long-term success of the company, and to take care of the interests of not just the shareholders, but all stakeholders. So when you're looking at the long term, I think the case for diversity, let's hear it from the room, maybe not on the other side of the pond, but let's hear it from the room. I think the case for diversity has more or less been established, right? I think it's the issue of how. So we should know. If we don't know, please find out the McKinsey statistics, often quoted, that boards which have gender diversity outperform those who don't by 25%, and those who have ethnic diversity outperform by 39%. So there is, in terms of diversity, there are two main strands. One is for economic and business reasons, and then the other is that it's the right thing to do, especially when you look at the composition of society. And when you're looking at society, you can be looking at this society, the society in which we live, i.e. the UK, or the wider society. And if businesses are going to be competitive long-term, they need to look at not just selling perhaps to the UK, but even if they're selling to the UK, there's a certain composition in the UK. But they also need to look at selling outside of the UK. In other words, how do you ensure the long-term success of the company? So I think the first thing is to understand the business case for diversity. And as boards, leaders, once you understand the business case for diversity, the question then becomes, how do you get that diversity in the boardroom? And what type of diversity is important to you? So we often talk about gender and race diversity, perhaps because they're the most visible, but there are many other types of diversity. And what we're really trying to get at is diversity of thought in the boardroom to prevent groupthink, to prevent having blind spots, which actually helps with risk management. The other thing is that when you have diversity, there are stakeholders who are often not in the room. So to the extent that there is representation, those voices in the boardroom can bring in the voices of those stakeholders which you may not ordinarily hear, and therefore bring more roundedness to board discussions. So I think it's extremely important that the leadership, starting with the boardroom, but especially the CEO, really understand the business case for diversity or the moral case for diversity, the why of it, and then begin to tackle the how of it. Reason being that it really isn't straightforward at all. And it's interesting, last week there were almost two almost contradictory reports, but they weren't really if you looked at the fine print. The first was the release of the Parker Review that talked about ethnic, and a couple of weeks before we'd had the release of the FTSE Women Leaders Review that talks about, first of all, gender diversity, the FTSE Women Leaders Review, and then the Parker Review talks about ethnic diversity. And the thing about the good news about both reports was that they showed that trends were increasing in almost all of the metrics, even though, of course, we haven't gone far enough. And then there was another report released, and I think it was called, I forgot what it was called, but it was a report commissioned by Kemi Badenoch, which almost seems to suggest that we had got it all wrong, and it may be true that many workplaces are investing in EDI initiatives, but don't really understand why they're doing it and how to measure whether what they're doing is effective. Now, they're both true. But I think it goes to the crux of the matter, that boards, leaders need to understand the why. And I think once you understand the why, the how becomes much more manifest. And of course, it's not a piece of cake, but as long as I think we keep moving in the right direction, that's what's important.
Thank you very much, Paige. It's profound and it's a bit of a complex topic. I mean, the effectiveness of, or the impact of women on boards is the IoD Glass Ceiling Group is collaborating with Durham University to find out how we can increase the impact and improve the impact of women on board. So stay tuned for that, but I think that's true. Now, Fiona, controversial one, would expect nothing less from you. Why should you, as an entrepreneur, bring on a non-executive director and possibly a board chair before you raise investment?
Before you raise investment?
Before you raise investment.
I think there's a couple of things here. Firstly, why should you have a non-executive director? I think for me, it's why should you have an advisor or an adult in the room? I've actually worked with quite a lot of entrepreneurs, and I've been involved in an organisation called Hanks. Now, Hanks is a condom company. If you think about the original condoms, it's sort of Durex, it's Trojan, it's men. And these are two female entrepreneurs set up a condom company called Hanks. But they do all sorts of different things, you know, sexual products and stuff. And I happened to meet Farah, and I realised how stressful it was, because they had taken on investment. They were dealing with quite complex angel investors. They were raising capital. And they were also trying to run the business. And actually just having an adult in the room to chair the board meetings, to actually advise them on their presentations to raising capital makes an enormous difference. Most organisations get into financial difficulty, and certainly in the angel side, you're going to be burning through your cash quite quickly. So just understanding insolvency law, you know, these are experts in the room. You don't, and certainly if you're going to raise capital or list, having somebody with listing experience is going to result in you likely to have more success in listing. So there's a whole load of reasons. Now, you don't have to have a board. You can actually have advisors. You don't have to do it in that way. But just having a group of people that you can call on, and advisors is very different. You know, you can ask them advice, listen to the advice, ignore the advice if you want to. Whereas actually getting in the angel and the entrepreneur market, you tend to find that it's the investors who demand board seats. So it can be quite an odd boardroom. Perju quite rightly talked about, you know, the latest statistics from the Parker Review and FTSE Women Leaders. Yes, we've made huge progress on our large companies, but at the AIM level, you know, 16%. In the private area, there's very little diversity in the boardroom. So there's still a lot of work to be done. And the other thing that those research reports are showing is we've made very little progress in executives in the boardroom. And we've talked about how difficult it is to shift the needle there. But in terms of, you know, getting involved, there's an awful lot that experienced executives, you know, you in the room, and also young people in the board, you can bring that diverse perspective without having to increase the size of your board. But there's a whole host of reasons and support structures out there to make you more effective. Most organisations get into problem often through HR difficulties. They haven't got the operational processes right, and sometimes that can be the first thing that destroy them. So other people's wisdom can help you enormously.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Fiona. Rosie, I'd like to go to you now. In your experience, how do investors interact with board members and what are their top concerns?
So I'm going to tackle this mostly from the perspective of an investor in listed equities, which are what I've spent most of my time as a career, time during my career doing. So as an investor, you'd typically see management in your larger holdings a couple of times a year. You do that in order just to check in with how things are going, also to get to know the management team, because typically there'd be a fair degree of turnover. But you'd also see your boards. And I think if you're curious about how the company is going, what the strategy is, and what kind of degree of support the management team has in the boardroom, meeting the board members is really important. And I used to try and meet the chairs of all of my big holdings at least once a year. I'd also do a check on who is in the boardroom before I made a new investment. And I'll say this because it's public, but I remember quite a few years ago I was looking at making a new investment into McDonald's. And at that stage, I think the McDonald's board had one person who was under 60, and the chairman was in his 80s and had been on the board for over 25 years. They don't have term limits in America, and he's a previous chief exec, no doubt very gifted. But at that point, McDonald's didn't have a loyalty card or an app. And I think a lot of it was down to the fact that you didn't have someone in that seat of power who actually knew how to use the smartphone. A little bit like what the Lady Mayoress was saying about the using email when you're a very important CEO. So just that kind of thing. What's the board agenda? What kind of support and advice are they, as the management team, getting? What's the big picture is really important to find out as an investor.
Thank you very much, Rosie. Peju, another interesting one. What strategies can be implemented to foster diversity and inclusion within the senior leadership team, especially in, I would say, incubation time, the very starting phase, and how can a diverse leadership team contribute to a company's innovation and adaptability in rapidly changing business environment?
Ooh, very long question. Let me first of all say that, and I expect most of us in this room are entrepreneurs. I would just like to cycle back to say that you do have an opportunity to shape your board. And I think that success in the boardroom starts with the boardroom composition. So as you're bringing in investors and as you're formulating the board, think about some of the issues that we've talked about in terms of composition of the board. You want to have expertise in the room. Perhaps you want to have particular spikes in terms of expertise. You could look at gender diversity. You could look at ethnic diversity, age diversity, skills. There's so many things, but I think experience. But there's so many things you need to bring in. And also in terms of looking at the stage of formation of your company. If you're a very young company, think about the type of board director. So for example, a very young company that brings in, let's say, a city grandee. The city grandee may have done this sort of thing so many years ago that they've forgotten what it's like to be fundraising and knocking on doors. So is that the best type of board member that you need in terms of your board composition? So I think success on the board and bringing in diversity on the board and inclusion, going back to that why, starts with understanding why that person, you've only got, depending on the size of the board, you may have 4 seats, you may have 6 seats, you may have 8 seats. Each seat is vitally important. And I think once you understand why those people are in the room, that makes the inclusion aspect much more important, because if you got, there's no point in having diversity and representation without inclusion. And I have been in that situation before where I'm on the board, but actually people didn't expect me to speak. And boy, are they surprised when I actually do open my mouth and I have a lot to say. So careful if you're going to have me on your board. But I think there's so many things that can be done. So starting with that board composition, the understanding of the why, I think inclusion needs to be led by the CEO especially. Inclusion at the boardroom needs to be led by the chair. Inclusion in the organization needs to be led by the CEO. Because often, as I said, you have that diversity without inclusion. There are many there's a well-worn route towards how you can ensure the diversity, starting with targets, like the FTSE Women Leaders Review and the Parkers Review, metrics, so that if you're going to have the targets at the top, well, you better have a pipeline at the bottom so that you can ensure those people get all the way to the top. You may need to think about bringing in people from outside your sector. So for example, some of my companies are in the construction sector, not the most diverse, both for gender and ethnicity. So if we're going to have gender or ethnic diversity, we have to be thinking about bringing in people from outside the sector. So there's so many things that need to be done, but I think it starts with that understanding of why that person is in the boardroom, believing that they genuinely have something to contribute, and ensuring that their voices are heard at the table.
Thank you. Yes, I think the chair role is so important. Now, I know you have to go in just a minute, and I want to give people a chance to ask you questions. So I just want to go out early and see whether there are any questions in the room at the moment. Yes, there are, before Peju goes, and for the rest of the panel as well. Mariana.
Hi, I just want to ask you.
Can you wait for the roaming mic? And also, please say who you are and where you're from.
Whilst you're waiting for the mic, I have a fantastic podcast of Peju talking, and it's just superb. So if you go to Women on Boards on the net, any programs, look for Peju. It's just fab. It's not coincidence where she has a campaign and she drives it. So.
Hi, Mariana Cherry, 5 Steps to Happy, University of Happiness. I'd just like to ask you a question. So I have been on the boards and as a volunteer, unpaid. And I know so many women who are on boards, but they're sitting and not being paid. Could you tell us what is trajectory from saying being unpaid to the paid position? Is there some kind of process? Thank you.
Peju, do you want to go first?
Do you want me to do it?
That's your area.
I'll ask, is that I've actually just been answering an email on this. Being on a charity board, community board, is not the same as being on a listed board. It's very, very competitive to get those paid positions, whether it's the public sector or a company board. A lot of people will say, well, why do it then if it's not the same and if that's where you want to get to in the end? The reason you do it is unless you are a chief executive and already an expert in the boardroom, you learn about you. It's a mini MBA in governance. You don't really know how you're going to add value until you've been on a board. So it's well worth doing it for you. It's fantastically rewarding as long as you choose the right organisations. There's some shockers out there, and I can assure you if the organisation's got no staff, you are the staff. And so really understand what you're doing and why, and work out what you're getting up. It's hugely rewarding, and it actually will create you options in life. It will give you resilience. It will change the way you think. It's massively important. Getting onto paid boards, Peju can tell you about that, because it's really competitive, certainly at the top level, and understanding your value add. And those that have been on community boards prior to that, who understand the tortuous environment of collective decisions, are going to interview a damn sight better than you will. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you. And Fiona really is the expert with women on boards. But just to say a thing about unpaid roles, it's that thing of, you first of all do your bachelor's degree, and then you do a master's, and then you do a PhD, and how many degrees are you going to do before you actually start working? So I think sometimes you can think, oh, well, it's wonderful to do the unpaid roles to get some experience, but then at the end of the day, how many do? You have to then ensure that you're being paid for your time. So as with all things, we would know, you would know when you think you have enough experience and go for the paid roles. But certainly there commercial boards, women on boards, fantastic. I feel like I'm just plugging women on boards, but it's a fantastic organization. I started learning there, starting with how to write my CV, free interview practice, and yeah.
Anything to add, Rosie?
No, me too. And I've also done some quite heavy lifting on charity boards as well. So, but you learn a lot. And hopefully you give back a little bit as well.
Fiona's contact details will be in the follow-up email. Any other questions from the floor? Ria Hamaguchi.
Hi, my name is Ria.
Wait for the mic because of the recording, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ria. I'm IoD, the grass seeding group committee member. And also I am representing Asian women here, maybe I can. So my question is, it says the board's law in driving corporate diversity. So I would like to ask you, each one of you, what is the special quality, kind of your effort to be in the boards? Because 3 days ago, I was approached by Japanese government for having the hearing session from the Japanese lady who successfully doing the company business. So all the people said that the funding is very, very difficult, and also the treatment from the company is very secondary class. So I totally understand that this event is very timely and topical. Therefore, the way you made to be able to step up, because of the previous, panelists said, if you have no chance, bring the foldable chair. So, but particularly, Asia is very difficult.
Bring the what?
Bring the what?
Folding chair.
Folding
Pull it up.
Folding chair. Yes. Particularly Asian women to speak up is very difficult. So from your wisdom, share your experience. Thank you.
I'm trying to figure out where to start, but there are very good statistics in the recently released Parker Review report about representation on board by different types of ethnicity. So I think if you get a chance, look it up. It's available on the net. But I think at the end of the day, for those diverse candidates, whether they are women or have any other type of women aren't actually diverse candidates, neither within the minority, but and so we should be 50-50 actually. But it's first by understanding why you are on the board, and my belief is that it may be that one is appointed to the board because it's a tick box exercise. However, by the time you make the long list and the short list, you definitely already have the qualifications to be on the board. And I think it's therefore for the candidates, for the board member, the new board member, to understand what particular angle they bring and to ensure that their voice is heard in the room. I think there's also a responsibility, because sometimes perhaps you're the first woman on the board or you're the first ethnic minority on the board. And sometimes there's a huge weight of expectation, thinking, am I representing all women? Am I representing all ethnic minorities? But most important, I think, is for one to understand that you do have a point of view. I was told, and this is actually very true, that sometimes, and my experience on being on the board was that for the first at least 12 months, I was quite nervous and didn't want to say anything, because actually I was on a very good board with experts in audit and experts in risk and experts in remuneration and experts in ESG, and I kept thinking, what do I have to contribute? But I found that there were questions niggling at the back of my mind, which it took me a while to articulate. Now, so my diversity sometimes is my strength, it's my superpower, because those questions were there because I really did have a diverse and a different point of view. And when I articulated when I finally gathered the courage to articulate those questions, you could hear, aha, we hadn't thought about that. And so I think it's really just having the confidence to know that you do have something valuable to bring. Your perspective is important. And by your not sharing your perspective, you're actually depriving the room of your wisdom. And so I think it's important that we gain that confidence. But in my case, it took a while to gain the confidence. What I did when I did speak, I found that I couldn't stop speaking.
Thank you so much, Peju. It is, now that clock's running fast, about 10 to...
I am so sorry, I have to leave. I have to fly to catch this evening, but I couldn't miss this panel. But I'm sure my colleagues will do a fantastic job. Thank you so much for having me there.
Thank you. Rosie, yes, over to you.
So I'm on the board of an investment management business, and having been a fund manager myself and worked in the city for a long time, although I really enjoyed my career, there weren't that many other women around in similar levels. And secondly, I'd learned that, as I was saying earlier, as a fund manager and analyst, you have to be curious and ask questions. And I'm one of those people who just will always go ahead and ask a question. So unlike Peju, although I was nervous, I think it was my second board meeting. And twice a year, we get to interview the fund managers, and they present to us the performance of their fund and talk about their teams and all of this. And we were given the packs a week beforehand, and I looked through a couple of the packs, and all of the pictures were of men. And I checked the names of the different fund managers, and that doesn't always help you, because sometimes the names, particularly if they're Asian or unfamiliar language, you're not quite sure whether they're male or female, but all the pictures were men from both, for two of the funds. And then all of the pictures of the team in action going to see their companies. They were all, like how prime ministers like having their pictures taken at construction sites and things like that. Well, fund managers like that as well. They like to show pictures of them walking around factories. There wasn't a single woman in any of the pictures. It was incredible. So I just gathered all of my courage up after this big, important fund manager had made his presentation and said, do you share these packs with your clients? And the guy said, yeah. And I said, do you think there's anything missing in any of the pictures? And he looked at me and the room went absolutely silent. And then he said, I think I know what you're asking about. And I didn't want to join that board just to be the person who made a big fuss about the fact that there were not enough females in senior positions. But I have become that person and started the conversation, and we now mark all of the teams on the diversity. And funnily enough, all of them have now started bringing females to the presentations. And I'm hoping, I've got involved with a bunch of initiatives as well, that they're also starting to promote and hire more women, and I'm counting. I keep a score. So it is a really important conversation. It's just like having money. Being a board member and asking questions is really important as well.
We're all absolutely desperate to answer this question, so that's a good question. The role of the board. I mean, we know that if a board isn't chaired well, then the diverse voice isn't heard. And that's why that people often said you need at least 3, because you're hoping that when they're interrupted and not allowed to speak, that you'll get support. So that is beginning to happen. The question here is the role of the board in corporate diversity. So what's the role of the board in actually changing the diversity below? And there's one fantastic example of it. But in general, one of the concerns I have is the board has actually got to be responsible for the culture of the organisation. And they've probably got to give funding and budget over and above having free minority networks and doing loads of initiatives, and the budget being the diversity and inclusion salary, because that's largely what it is in most companies. They've actually got to invest in leadership development so that within companies, the permafrost, those people have got to their level of incompetence of managing people, which I have to say the city is incredibly good at. I mean, really, they've a masterclass in this at the moment. I see still very little change in terms of investing in what makes a good leader, because it's investing in 3 or 4 C-suite executives or the pipeline below. But actually, when you're investing in the case of, I'm actually not going to name a company because I'm going to upset somebody in a room. When you're investing in hundreds and thousands of people, that's the real art. And that, I think, is where we've got slightly disjointed. And I think, because we work with so many different companies, what I'm also finding, there's a concern that those 3, 4 women, and maybe the one ethnic minority, because it largely is only one, thinks they're an expert. Because they're an expert in finance and risk and oversight and governance in some cases. They're not necessarily expert in leadership development and cultural change, which we know takes decades and is really complex and difficult. And these lovely mentoring programs, cross-mentoring programs, this program and that program, they're nice. In some cases, more women leave as a result of meeting and spending time with. So be really, really careful what you achieve. So the board can drive it, and that's why the Financial Conduct Authority said, no, it's not good enough to just put your gender pay gap. We're actually going to say, what does this mean? Explain your culture, and actually you are responsible for it in a way that you've never been quite responsible for it before. There's a hell of a lot to work to be done. So that was a great question. Thank you.
And 7 out of 10 of the UK's top companies have not complied with that legislation. So lots to do. Okay, so the clock's running fast. I think we can do one more good question. Is there one? Yes, hello. Please wait for the roaming mic and say who you are.
Hi, thank you very much for just the music to my ears, because the Corporate Governance Advisory trying to promote women as much as possible on the boards. Quick question. Yeah, culture is the strategy for breakfast. That's perfect, of course. But how do you make that job description to change the culture? Because we fight a lot with the shareholders to get that job description, not the 10 years of experience, because that leads in the circles of getting back to the same male-dominated requirements, so on and so on. So how do you ladies fight your shareholders to get the right job descriptions? Thank you.
Well, in terms of shareholders, I was about to answer that question. You shuck the shareholders thing in there as well. So that's a different thing altogether. The latest Financial Reporting Council's code of best practice, which is that the FTSE 350 are expected to comply or explain by, not only makes you more accountable for it, but actually they've got a cheat sheet on questions that the board can ask. Have we as a leadership team, has the chief executive agreed what good conduct looks like? Do we have a set of standard policy? Have you asked this question? Have you asked that question? Is it a tick box? Are we doing this? So actually that's because we cannot wait for the investors. We just cannot. And then if you look at, because, in terms of there's institutional investors, there's index investors, quite large parts of the share register are held by individual investors, but they're so disconnected to it, we're not even talking to them. So it's just really complex. And if you look at PE is not diverse to start off with. And VCT may or may not be a bit better. And they actually, when they're looking at their boards, the investors now are asking them questions exactly in the way Rosie's done. Sorry. Do we have anybody looking at these? So that the actual women so they're not only not investing in female entrepreneurs, the companies within aren't very diverse that they're investing in. And normally the only person in the boardroom is the chair. And the chair is sitting piggy in the middle between the PE investor wanting this. But actually what's happened with the economic environment is actually it's going to take a lot longer to turn these companies around. And actually there's a great podcast, I think it's McKinsey Strategy Room or Harvard Business Review, saying PE's got a problem because actually they need from centrally to invest in leadership development and drive that through the portfolio companies because they've got only 2 or 3 women. They can't even put a leadership program together. So it's incredibly complex, but that's a big yet another big question. But these are the real challenges now. Whipty-flipping D, we've got 40% at FTSE 350. It is whipty-flippy D, because outside that, not much. But look at this room today. This would not have happened years ago. I'm going to shout out Alison Rose as well, NatWest. This was not, Yvonne, we were chatting about where she'd gone now. Fantastic change. Corporations, like NatWest, being a corporate member of my organisation and planting board seats and driving entrepreneurs and sponsoring the IoD, which is also doing a fantastic job in terms of professional accredited qualifications as well. So, there is a lot happening.
Thanks very much for your
ranting. Apologies.
Thanks for the shout out. I meet so many women who have had life-changing career moves because of you and your organisation. So you've done a great job over the past however many years. Well done. It's 5, and Rosie, I'd just like to ask if you have any closing remarks.
I can't follow up on Fiona. That's it's just great to be in a room to see so many women with drive, energy. You're all still here at 5 o'clock, talking about all these issues. Please come and talk to us over a glass of wine, or is it only tea? We can all make a difference. I think that this room is testament to that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, thank you to all of the speakers for today. It takes a village, and I'd just like to shout out to my committee, who most of people are here now. Marisol Arias, say hello. Hello. Thank you. Esther Teakin was the COO at IoD, and without her, this would not exist. Thank you. Sibylla Din. Mariana Cherry, Ria Hamaguchi. Thank you. And some are not here, but it takes the help of all of you. Thank you very much. The IoD is a fantastic institution, and it's key to the journey of so many successful women entrepreneurs and women in leadership. So I'm grateful to be in this position doing this for free, but I feel very rewarded by it. There's a special offer today of 25% off membership for everybody here today. So if you are interested in joining the IoD or just finding out more, please speak to me or one of my team. Can I encourage all IoD members to get involved in the Director of the Year Awards? It's been running for decades, and the winners include the great and the good in UK business. We need more women entries, and a link will be sent in the follow-up email. Lastly, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Yvonne Greaves and NatWest. It's really heartfelt. We first spoke at the House of Lords last July. It seems like such a long time ago. Your tireless support of the vision has enabled us to do this today, so thank you very much.
Honestly, this will be quick, because, very nice. Now, thank you very much. How glad am I of flying from City today that I can take this through their new scanners, so I don't need to leave it. The amount of bottles of champagne I've had to leave with colleagues, but thank you, I can take it through the airport, thank you. So I just want to say a huge thanks, really, I don't want it to be a mutual thing here, but Vanessa, it's been an absolute pleasure. We did all the panel briefings several months ago, and we were like, people were thinking, gosh, when is this? And we realised it was 2 or 3 months. She's the most organised person I've ever worked with, which is fantastic. Thanks again to Kristen as well, and to the IoD and Women in Boards for agreeing to host this with us. What a phenomenal panels. Not just saying that because I was one of them, but no, the great panels. I always love hearing about women in boards, because I've been on a real board journey over the last 8 years, and I've had a lot of support from them, and with the IoD as well, like support there. So it's just great to see that collaboration, because I think it's key that we collaborate with each other rather than trying to do everything in our own silo. I think we get so much more achieved. Maggie, Heart of the City, I've missed working with you, and it's been great to see you today, and I didn't realise there was that much support out there, especially around the ethnic minority business owners, so I think that's a real great takeaway for today, just that connectability. And then Lady Mayoress, thank you as well. But also I want to thank our teams. It's phenomenal that so many people turned up today, and we were over capacity at one point, and I've never been so stressed. I'm glad I got my hair done yesterday that I've got no grey today. But this team have been absolutely phenomenal. They've been so adaptable. They've they've brought in different chairs and been so adaptable. So it's a huge thanks to all the team behind the scenes that have been working tirelessly to bring it all together. We do now have some time for some networking and some drinks, and please network, and that's the whole spirit of today. For the next hour or so, and can I just suggest for the queue for the jackets, maybe try and stagger if you see a bit of a gap. Just go and get your jacket early, because I can see this massive queue at the end. But thank you so much again for today, and I hope we can do this again another time. That would be amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you.